It's 3:47 a.m. on March 15th, 2025, at a Pentagon cybersecurity monitoring station. Alarms are going off as analysts discover unauthorized access to classified Defense Threat Reduction Agency files, intercepted emails, and stolen passwords from nuclear defense systems. When investigators trace the intrusion, they find it wasn't a state-sponsored adversary or a seasoned operative. It was a group of teenagers who had used nothing more than social engineering tactics to intercept classified communications and cruise through America's most secure military networks. 3 days before the Pentagon breach, the group began what investigators would later call the most basic attack in the book. Social engineering had become the leading cause of cybersecurity breaches in 2025, accounting for 36% of all intrusions. But this particular operation started with something even simpler: a phone directory and teenage confidence. At 2:15 p.m. on March 12th, the first call came into Raytheon's IT support desk. The caller claimed to be conducting urgent security audits across all defense contractors. He had done his homework. He knew the names of actual Pentagon cybersecurity officials, recent contract numbers, and even mentioned a legitimate software update that had been rolled out the week before. When the technician hesitated, the pressure escalated. "Look, we've got senators breathing down our necks after that classified leak last month. I need to verify your system access protocols right now." The technician provided his login credentials. 47 minutes later, a second call targeted Lockheed Martin's help desk. This time, the caller requested immediate password resets for compromised accounts that needed to be secured before the weekend. The caller rattled off employee ID numbers, information easily gathered from LinkedIn profiles and company press releases. These attacks succeeded because they looked routine: password resets, security updates, standard IT procedures. The technician, facing what seemed like a legitimate emergency, complied within minutes. By 4:30 p.m. that same day, the group had collected credentials from 5 major Pentagon contractors. They hadn't written a single line of code or exploited any software vulnerability. Instead, they had weaponized something far more accessible: human trust and the pressure of bureaucratic urgency. Each call lasted less than 8 minutes. Each victim believed they were following proper security protocols. The teenagers then used these contractor credentials as stepping stones into the Pentagon's own networks. The first system they accessed was the Defense Threat Reduction Agency's document portal, a gateway that should have been locked behind multiple layers of authentication. But because the stolen credentials belonged to legitimate contractors with existing access rights, the intrusion appeared completely normal to automated monitoring systems. For 72 hours, the group moved through classified databases, downloading files and mapping network architecture, all while security systems registered their activity as routine contractor work. Within hours of gaining initial access, the Pentagon intrusion evolved from simple credential theft into a sprawling intelligence operation. The group had discovered something cybersecurity experts call lateral movement, using their foothold in contractor systems to hop between networks like stepping stones across a digital river. Each successful jump expanded their reach deeper into America's military infrastructure. By March 16th, 24 hours after their first successful contractor infiltration, the group had accessed classified communications from 3 separate Pentagon divisions. They had intercepted emails discussing nuclear defense readiness assessments, downloaded personnel files containing security clearance information, and captured login credentials for systems they hadn't even attempted to breach yet. The stolen contractor access acted as a master key, opening doors throughout the Defense Department's interconnected network architecture. The most concerning discovery came at 11:30 p.m. that same evening. While monitoring network traffic, the group identified a vulnerability in the Pentagon's own internal authentication system. The Defense Threat Reduction Agency's servers were running security software that hadn't been updated in 18 months. This wasn't a sophisticated zero-day exploit. It was a known vulnerability that Cisco had patched years earlier, but military bureaucracy had delayed the installation across hundreds of government systems. The teenagers exploited not just technical oversights, but institutional failures. Overworked help desk staff, delayed security updates, and authentication systems that trusted contractor credentials without additional verification. Each phone call had lasted less than 10 minutes. Each victim believed they were following proper emergency protocols. The group's digital footprint during this period revealed methodical intelligence gathering rather than random exploration. They systematically cataloged which systems contained the most sensitive information, identified which networks had the weakest access controls, and mapped the relationships between different military divisions. For 72 hours, they operated with the digital equivalent of top-secret clearance, all because a handful of help desk technicians had answered their phones and followed standard password reset procedures. What investigators would later realize was that the breach had already moved far beyond the initial social engineering attack. The teenagers were no longer pretending to be legitimate users. They had become legitimate users, armed with authentic credentials and authorized access to some of America's most classified military systems. After seeing how easily those help desk calls worked, do you think you'd catch a social engineering attempt if someone called your workplace tomorrow? Drop your answer in the comments below. But the real shock came when investigators discovered just how far the teenagers had penetrated into America's nuclear defense systems. But 4 days into the breach, the Pentagon's real-time dashboards and alerting mechanisms finally triggered the first automated detection. At 6:23 a.m. on March 19th, anomaly detection systems identified unusual patterns in the Defense Threat Reduction Agency's network traffic. The alerts flagged that someone was downloading classified documents at 3 a.m. using legitimate contractor credentials, but from IP addresses that had never accessed these systems before. The forensic investigation that followed revealed digital fingerprints scattered across dozens of military networks. Investigators deployed behavioral analytics, tracking not just what files were accessed, but how they were accessed. The group had made a critical mistake. They browsed classified databases the way teenagers browse social media, jumping between topics, downloading everything that looked interesting, and leaving behind access patterns that no legitimate contractor would ever follow. Digital forensics teams spent 18 hours reconstructing the attack timeline from system logs. They discovered that the group had accessed nuclear defense communications, downloaded personnel security clearance files, and intercepted emails discussing military readiness assessments across 3 separate Pentagon divisions. But the most damaging revelation came when investigators analyzed the timestamps. The intruders had been inside Pentagon networks for 72 consecutive hours, operating during times when legitimate contractors would never be working. Every login, every file download, every database query had been logged automatically. The attackers thought they were invisible, but modern cybersecurity systems had been recording their every digital move. The breakthrough came when investigators cross-referenced the stolen contractor credentials with the original social engineering phone calls. Phone records revealed that all 5 targeted defense contractors had received calls from the same area code within a 6-hour window on March 12th. The calls had originated from different phone numbers, but telecommunications forensics showed they were all routed through the same voice-over internet protocol service, a service that required payment with cryptocurrency but still maintained transaction records. When federal agents traced the cryptocurrency payments back to their source, they discovered something that shocked the entire Pentagon cybersecurity apparatus. The sophisticated operation that had penetrated America's most classified military networks had been orchestrated not by foreign intelligence operatives or seasoned cybercriminals, but by a group of teenagers. When federal agents traced the operation back to its source on March 20th, 2025, they discovered something that shocked the entire Pentagon cybersecurity apparatus. The sophisticated operation that had penetrated America's most classified military networks hadn't been orchestrated by foreign intelligence operatives or seasoned cybercriminals. The attackers were teenagers, 5 high school students between the ages of 15 and 17, operating from their bedrooms across suburban America. The group's technical sophistication masked their age. They had coordinated the contractor calls with precision, assigned roles based on individual strengths, and maintained operational security through encrypted messaging platforms. Digital forensics revealed that their primary goal was exploration, testing boundaries, proving their technical abilities, and gaining access to systems that professional cybersecurity experts had assumed were impenetrable. None of the group had attempted to sell the classified information they'd accessed, nor had they tried to profit from the stolen contractor credentials. Their motivations weren't financial, they were intellectual. One member had been exposed to computers since childhood and had progressed from curiosity to competitive hacking through online forums where teenage hackers shared techniques and competed for digital bragging rights. As one of the group later explained to investigators, "You can control all these computers from the government, the military, large corporations, and if you know what you're doing, you can travel through the internet at your will with no restrictions. That's power." The group maintained dual lives. They attended classes during the day and conducted sophisticated cyber attacks during evening hours, treating the Pentagon breach as an intellectual challenge rather than a criminal enterprise. Their technical coordination suggested experience beyond their years. They understood lateral movement, credential harvesting, and network architecture well enough to evade automated monitoring systems for 72 hours. When FBI agents executed search warrants simultaneously across 5 different states on March 21st, 2025, they found teenagers still seated at their computers. The investigation revealed that what had initially appeared to be a sophisticated state-sponsored cyber attack was actually the work of teenagers who had stumbled upon vulnerabilities that the Pentagon's own cybersecurity experts had missed for years. Their arrests would become the catalyst for the largest military cybersecurity overhaul in decades, not because the attack was technically advanced, but because it exposed how fundamentally broken the Pentagon's access control systems had become. Within 6 months of the arrests, the Pentagon's response revealed just how deeply the teenage breach had shaken America's military establishment. Congress increased the U.S. military's funding for cyber operations and defenses under the fiscal year 2026 National Defense Authorization Act, advancing a cyber budget of approximately $15.1 billion, the largest single-year increase in military cybersecurity spending in Pentagon history, directly triggered by vulnerabilities the teenagers had exposed through basic social engineering tactics. The budget boost triggered an immediate contractor access protocol overhaul. By June 1st, 2026, new provisions required the Department of Defense to standardize cybersecurity requirements across the defense industrial base, reduce contract-specific cyber rules, and report those actions to Congress. Every defense contractor compromised during the March breach faced mandatory security audits, new authentication requirements, and continuous monitoring systems designed to prevent the kind of help desk infiltration that had started the entire operation. Pentagon leadership implemented what they called RMF reform, a complete restructuring of how military systems handle security compliance. The Pentagon planned to roll out this reform over the coming months, with a focus on simplification, automation, and continuous monitoring. The teenagers had exploited gaps between different security systems. The Pentagon's response was to eliminate those gaps entirely through automated verification that would make social engineering attacks nearly impossible. The most significant change involved identity management across military networks. The Department of Defense manages millions of identities across multiple networks and mission environments. Military and civilian personnel, contractors, retirees, allied partners, and machine-based identities associated with operational systems and artificial intelligence technologies. Every contractor credential that had been stolen through phone calls now required multi-factor authentication, biometric verification, and real-time behavioral monitoring. By June 2026, 15 months after the initial breach, the Pentagon had fundamentally transformed how America's military networks operate. The teenagers who had accessed classified nuclear defense files using nothing more than confident phone calls had inadvertently forced the largest cybersecurity modernization in Pentagon history, proving that the weakest link in any security system remains human trust, and that institutional vulnerability often demands institutional overhaul. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. If you enjoy this content, feel free to like and subscribe. Take care, guys, and have a good rest of your day.